Hello everybody. Hi guys, thank you so much for coming back to my channel. Hello to my longtime subscribers and hello to my passerbys and new viewers, which I'm sure I'm going to have a healthy load of. Healthy load. Not sure how I feel about that, but I'm going to use it. I'm a full-time reseller. For those of you who do not know, I resell anything and everything from Amazon liquidation pallets to used clothing. Usually I don't just find like clothing from the 1890s. I mean, that is a rare occurrence for me. This is my biggest historical clothing haul that I've ever personally had. Usually if I find something, it's like at an antique swap or something and it's like one piece and I'm paying up for it. So to find like a wardrobe of late Victorian, early Edwardian pieces is obviously haul worthy. I do want to note for my longtime viewers and my new viewers that I am not a historian. This is not my study, okay? Even though I sell used clothing and I sell lots of vintage clothing, usually when I sell vintage clothing, it's like 1950s, 1960s. Like this is a whole nother realm to me. So I do want to let you guys know this is not my study. I can comfortably say I know more than the average person about the materials, the fashion, the aesthetic, if you will, of, you know, antique clothing. I guess I know more than the average person just because I have sold some pieces before to collectors, but feel totally free to correct me if I get something wrong or if something is a little bit skewed, if I have the dates a little bit wrong. Feel free to correct me down below in the comments. With that being said, I'm going to try to go into a little bit of detail within each of these pieces. I also have handy dandy accessories. I actually have a bin of accessories over here that I'm going to try to get into. Hopefully I can make it all in like a video under 30 minutes. I also have some men's clothing that I'm not going to include in the video, but if you guys want to see that, head over to Instagram because I'm probably going to make like an Instagram short for that. Anyways, where did I get these items? These all came from one person. They came from an estate. Wouldn't call it an estate sale, more of an estate. The amazing woman who owned these before she collected Victorian era specifically clothing pretty much her entire adult life. Would attend like Victorian themed parades and parties and tried to educate people on the Victorian era and specifically fashion. So super amazing. She knew what she was doing. Because she was a collector and because she took this so seriously, she did restore some pieces. So it is very important to know when you're going to resell something this old, it is very important to know if it was restored, where it was restored, how much of it was restored, and the quality of the restoration, which I'm going to try to point out to you guys so that you can have knowledge if you go to an estate sale or a Victorian swap meet or just an antique store and you see something that you think is authentic but it has like newer looking stitching in some areas. I'm going to try to educate you guys on being able to tell the difference between if something was partially restored or if it's a reproduction. Because those reproductions can get really tricky, especially if they are homemade reproductions. That is a thing where people will replicate a Victorian item using like an at-home sewing machine, so it is really hard to tell the difference if you don't know what you're looking for. Quick recap for those of you who are totally unfamiliar with Victorian era. It is from 1837 to 1901. From 1837 to 1901, I mean, what, that's like 70 some years. Like there were a lot of crazy transitions. So it's hard to be specific with, you can't just pick out one style and say this is Victorian exclusive. This was the Victorian style, because there are many. What I'm going to be showing you guys in this haul are late Victorian. I'm talking like 1890 to 1905, which is actually the Gibson Girl era. Most people think of Victorian, they think of Gibson Girl. After about 1901 to I think like 1909 to 1914, depending on who you're asking, it is the Edwardian era, which was very short-lived, but there are a couple of pieces here that do reflect the Edwardian era as well. So I think I'm going to get right into it. The first two pieces I'm going to kind of skim past because they do speak for themselves. So this is a Victorian lawn dress. Victorian, this one's possibly Edwardian. This one has the original glass buttons down the back. So this would button down the back, obviously. It does have a couple of metal clasps, but the metal clasps are replacement clasps. You can tell that is a modern replacement. I do want to know, it was very helpful. The woman who owned these had little index cards, and the index cards in themselves were very old, probably like from the 1970s, and the index cards were placed with some of the garments, explaining in detail what she refurbished and what was original. Most of the pieces are pretty much like 99 to 100% original. There is one piece that was extensively restored, and that one I'm going to show you guys last. Anyway, this one is still special. I'm not sure about the price tags. I'm not going to tell you guys how much I'm going to list them for because I really don't know yet. This is going to take a lot more research than what I've done so far. This is the second laundress. Now, if you want to get technical, this is actually a shirt waist and a skirt. So a shirt waist is just a blouse. That's what they called it back in the day, a blouse with an A-line skirt. This is in really nice condition, and if you guys could actually feel these through the screen, they're like a muslin, very gauzy, but very stiff muslin. So as you guys can see, I mean, I could go off about each piece, but I'm going to save you guys all that time. So this is actually interesting. So this is a morning outfit. This is the skirt and this is the bodice. So I think starting in about the 1880s, they separated the whole dress outfit into a bodice, which is the top, and the skirt. So what I'm going to let you guys know about the bodices in the late Victorian era is they started to have more focus on the top half of the garment, which is the bodice, rather than the bottom half. So if you think of like 1850s and 1860s Victorian, there was a lot of focus on the bottom half. There was a lot of focus on the skirt with the bustle or the hoop skirts and the accessories and the drapery and the ruffles, and the bodice was kind of like an afterthought just to match with your bottom half with your skirt. That sort of shifted in the late Victorian era where there was more focus on the bodice, I guess a little bit less focus on the skirt. So this is a morning outfit. However, they're both original. The skirt is, this would not have been worn together. She probably got these at two separate locations, and she just paired them together. But the material in the stitching is not the same. So I'm going to show you guys the skirt because that's the least exciting part. The trim on the skirt is original, which is absolutely amazing. The buttons on this skirt are also original. So what we have under here is a leather button. Look at this trim. I just want you guys to see this if the light ring doesn't completely wash it out. This is very heavy and it's very thick. That is another thing about before the 1890s, I don't know a specific date, most of the fabric used in clothing, like elegant evening dresses, not lawn dresses, most of the fabric was a heavier type of fabric. Stiffly lined skirts or stiffly lined bottoms, stiff silk, heavy cotton, muslin gauze. So the pieces that I have are kind of bordering. A couple of pieces are very clearly thick fabric. A couple of other pieces that I have here are kind of borderline where you can tell they were getting into using lighter garments, lighter materials to make the garments, I should say. What's amazing about this skirt, I'm going to show you guys. They're all amazing. I shouldn't make it sound specific to the skirt, is how amazing the clasps are intact. So as you can see, these clasps are large. They were not dinking around. They did not want these suckers to pop off. They did not want these suckers to bend or break. They're very thick, like industrial strength clasps, which is obviously what they used. So now that we got the skirt out of the way, and obviously there's not much to see on the inside. I should have probably shown you guys the inside so you could see the stitching. The inside has very heavy stitching. It has a lot of trim. This is the top piece, which, like I said, this wouldn't have been worn with this at the time, but the collector who had these items did pair them together as a mourning outfit. You guys, I'm sure you know Victorian mourning, you would wear black following the death of someone. I also have a couple of mourning hats you guys are gonna love, and a mourning purse as well. So stay tuned throughout the rest of this video. I don't know how long it's gonna take me at this point. This has this tight mock neck with a totally like embroidered bib all the way around. Absolutely beautiful. I really don't know if the camera is going to capture these pieces in all of their glory, but there is detail all the way down to the ends of the sleeves, and this one I have looked over pretty well, and the only areas that I can see that were restored are a couple of buttons, because this has black glass buttons which were cheap and very popular after Queen Victoria's husband died. So I have the black glass buttons on the back of this piece. Here is one of the original buttons. The other ones are unfortunately replaced. There are a couple of areas that have holes in them. So I do believe I'm going to sell this one as is. I don't think I'm going to go in there and repair the holes. This is like a heavy silk. I really don't want to mess it up by trying to repair it myself. That's something that needs to go to like a museum to get repaired. Oh yeah, okay. I'm moving through them faster than I thought. I'm gonna cry at these pieces. This is my absolute favorite piece out of the entire haul. So late 1890s, you could see like ornamental buckles were pretty popular. This is all original ornamental buckle. Velvet was also a very fashionable thing to have. This is all velvet trim. As you guys can see, this actually does have a snap button as well, and then it has your industrial strength clasps. So what you can see a little bit of puffiness at the shoulder. So these would be called a mutton. So mutton sleeves in the early 1890s, they started out up here. There was just a little bit of a puff up here, like a little nice geometric, it's not geometric at all, just a little nice little bit of volume up here. And then through the next 10 years, up until basically 1900, the muttons, the puff at the sleeve, gradually got bigger and went down to the elbow. So I do have one piece in here that has a full-on mutton from here all the way to the elbow. This one would have been probably from the early 1890s because it just has a little bit of a puff. Another thing I want to let you guys know, a lot of people have this very skewed idea that in the 1800s Victorian era, everybody had a cinched waist that was down to like 15 inches, which is not always true. Obviously, by looking at this, they had small waists, yes. But I don't think this would have been worn by someone with a cinched waist. They were smaller than we were, and a lot of this is kind of an optical illusion. You know, you have the bigger sleeves, you have the nice layered chest. They would put padding in certain areas, so it'd be like an optical illusion. Optical illusion, making their waist look cinched when that wasn't always the case. And then of course you had the skirts that would, you know, go out with a little bit of a butt bustle, which I also have an example of late Victorian bustle down here. So yeah, don't be fooled and think that every single Victorian woman had a completely cinched waist. Although small waists were sought after, a lot of it was optical illusion as well, as you can tell by this piece. So when you go to open this up, which I do believe this is silk, you have a secondary layer in here. I have to be so careful with these. And then you have my favorite, industrial clasps. So this piece is very worn. It was very loved, very aged, but you can see the corset boning inside here. So this type of boning was not to slim the waist. This would have done nothing to actually alter your size. This type of boning was just to keep the shape of the garment while you were wearing it. So a couple of these bones were replaced. This one looks like it originally had steel boning. They would make bones out of They would make corset bones out of literally whale bones, which is clearly completely illegal now, or they would make it out of like steel. This one has a couple of original steel pieces, and then it looks like this was restored with I don't know, like abalone or something. I don't know, probably not abalone. I don't know why I said that. Horn. So just a zoom in on the stitching for you guys. Look how amazing this is. Just absolutely beautiful. I could go on and on about this piece, so I'm going to stop now. And then this is the bottom to the outfit. So that, what I just showed you was the bodice. Oh, and another thing, 1890s, you want to look for that like kind of, I don't know why I say kind of, that V shape from the bodice to the skirt. So this one is all mostly original. Look at this. This velvet trim is also original. Can you believe that it's made at this bar? Because I can't. This is original. I'll show you guys the back. They have these, the clasps, the famous clasps in the back. I just, look at that stitching. So I did notice with this piece, as you guys can see, there's two inner layers. One of the inner layers was replaced. I shouldn't say replaced, refurbished, because this is authentic to the garment. However, this cloth right here, it looks like when she restored it, she cut this off. I don't know if there were holes in it. I don't know if it was just completely tarnished or battered, I should say. But this is replaced fabric from the original. So I can tell that she worked very hard to make sure that she kept as much original fabric on the inner layer of the skirt as possible, which is absolutely amazing. She was definitely a seamstress. The collector, the woman who I've gotten all this stuff from. Woo. This is, I wanted to call it a cape. Obviously, this is quintessential trench coat, right? Victorian era. So this only has one original button. This has a horn button. The other ones are replaced. Unfortunately, this is a bit tattered at the collar. So this is women's. Look at these beautiful pockets. This totally reminds me of like steampunk, which is a weird spin that modern people have put on Victorian clothing. But this actually does remind me of steampunk. This I do believe is also silk. I'm going to try to show you guys the inside of the lining on this one. Not anything too crazy. This one really speaks for itself. It is in amazing condition. A little bit of discoloration in some areas, which is obviously totally expected. Now on to the last clothing item set. I do have a couple of lawn skirts and a bustle that I want to show you guys. So this is another two-piece set. Bodice, skirt. This one is I was going to say early 1900s. This one is like, I'm talking late Victorian, possibly like 1898 to like 1902, I'm thinking. I could be wrong, but I'm going to show you guys the skirt first and save the best for last. This is the beautiful skirt, and this one does have a little bit of different, like the hem down here is like 9 yards long. Like if I were to spread this all out, it's insane. But the hem up top is obviously more cinched. There is a replaced button. No surprise there. A lot of Victorian clothing that I've seen has had replaced buttons somewhere. There's nothing too special about this piece. There's no inner lining. I think the most special about this piece is that it has just how long this actually is at the bottom if I were to lay this out flat, which is obviously also common for the Victorian era, late Victorian era. I have to keep saying that. I'm going to show you guys the top to it. Also, as you guys can tell from the pieces I've shown you, late Victorian era, early Edwardian, it was paler colors were starting to emerge. As you can tell, most of this stuff is pale. All of it's pale, aside from the very deep black, which of course the mourning black never changed. This is what I'm talking about when I say muttons. This is the arm. So they were I mean, think of how small they were back then. Like, their arms were probably like the size of my wrist, like their upper arms. And look at the size of this sleeve. I mean, it would have been like the 90% clothing and 10% woman underneath this garment. It is crazy. This piece, I guess I could say unfortunately, was pretty heavily restored. I'm sure she received it in rough condition. I'm sorry guys, I have to show you the sleeves one more time. Look at the sleeves. And then as you guys can see, the waist looks extremely tiny. But if you actually put it up next to me, and like, I'm a healthy girl, like I'm a good size, like I could probably put my waist in this. It's not too crazy. So the whole warped idea that everybody in the Victorian era had a really small cinched waist, just keep in mind, it was very trendy to have a small waist, but a lot of it was optical illusions. Anybody with these shoulders is gonna have an extremely small looking waist. That's just insane. I will do a quick rundown with you. Here we go, velvet ribbon. Like I said, velvet was very fashionable. I should probably show you guys the cuffs. There's a little bit of velvet on the cuff, so you guys can see in there. Can you see in there? Right away, when I first looked at this garment, I could tell that this was replaced with something more modern. There's so many. These little tiny clasps are obviously modern, and you can just tell the difference in white. We have this ivory white, this antique white, and then we have this bright white. You're not a muffin man who lives on. 30 minutes later, I've unclasped all the clasps. So, as you guys can see, there is some discoloration in here. So, this was heavily restored on the inside. How do I know? How do you know, Riley? How do you know it's restored on the inside? Well, if you look, the sleeves must have torn at some point. Here we go. Here's how I knew. You see that loop stitch? That wasn't invented until like the 70s. Maybe it was invented, but this wasn't used until the 70s. So I knew right away, I'm like, that stitching is modern. So when I first looked at this garment, because I looked at every single piece before I actually bought the whole lot, I was like, I hope this isn't something that was created in like the 70s and made to look 100 years old. But upon further inspection, I could very clearly see that the item is original in the other areas of stitching. It's really hard to show you guys on camera. But yeah, so I don't know, she must have gotten this piece in pretty rough condition and she did a pretty good repair job on it. If you look, there's a little slit here, and if you look underneath the slit, you will see Victorian stitching again. Victorian, you'll see old stitching, okay? Stitching didn't change like every 5 years. Here we go. So, that was my giveaway that, okay, the piece was just heavily restored. So what I want to show you guys is an example of a bustle. This is a tulle fabric bustle. Here we go. This is a center back bustle. So there's like, I think, 5 layers here. So you would have tied this around your lower waist, because at the time waistlines were moderate. They were lower than they were in the early 1800s, I'll say that. Because obviously we know in the 1920s the waistline like really dropped. But you have a bustle. This one's really light compared to some that you can find. So this is, the reason I say tulle is because this is obviously tulle. But yeah, very well made. Even the damn bustle. There were a couple of paddings that I also got in the lot, which I'm not going to show you guys because they're in the other room. I totally forgot to put them in here. There was some bustle padding, I believe. I'm not totally sure, but it's basically just like a cotton filled crescent moon shaped pad with a ribbon that I believe you would like put over a bustle for that extra added junk in the trunk, because they knew what they were doing. This is the last clothing item, not accessory, that I'm going to show you guys. So this is just like a T-skirt. I do believe this is, I don't believe this is Victorian. I believe this is probably Edwardian. Nothing crazy special about it. I can just show you guys like the stitching and stuff if you want to see that. Do I show you guys the hats or do I show you guys the other accessories? Oh, so I guess I'm going to show you guys the hats. So this one is from 1890 to 1901, according to her beautiful index cards. This is like a velvet hat with your little fancy dancies. You can see the inside. If you think you found an old hat, always look at the inside. Always look at the materials that were used. They were a little bit more crude than something that would be used today. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the lost art of flower making. Paper flowers, gauze flowers. A woman would sit home and they would make garments and feed the children and make food, and they would do a lot of flower making, depending on the era. This actually has flowers down on the inside, so this would probably be worn, I'm trying to think, it would be worn not like this, like clearly, at a little bit of an angle so that you could see the flowers on both sides of the hat. Straw hats were a thing, believe it or not. I did not know that until a couple of years ago. This is I do believe this is a men's 1920s straw hat. So this is not Victorian, but this did come in the haul. The reason I'm calling this one 1920s is because I did a little bit of research on that stamp inside. This hat is like sturdy. I mean, this bad boy could be used as like a bowl for cereal. It is super sturdy. This little guy is actually an antique hand warmer. I know there's a name for them. You would put a hand on each side, and if you were walking down the street in your beautiful little morning dress or whatever, you would, I'm not quite sure what type of fur this is. It is real fur. It could possibly, when I first saw this, I thought monkey fur, which I know that sounds so harsh, but yeah, monkey fur was a thing back in the day. Once I find out what kind of fur this is, I can figure out a better price estimate. Here is just a boring old hat that came with a lot. Not quite sure how to date this one. Probably like late Edwardian, possibly. Authentic ostrich feather boas or scarves. So these remind me of the 1920s. I haven't done that much research on them, but yeah, it was nice to have these thrown in the lot. Now I tried to get the boring hats out of the way because I want to show you guys the real, like, this is a men's, this is really like a good example of like a gauzy muslin cloth hat, like a men's riding hat, derby hat, whatever you want to call it. Now, the two best ones are in the boxes. This is a Victorian bonnet hat. Look at, so I don't know what kind of feathers these are, but they are real feathers. These little sequins, when I saw these, I'm like, what are these possibly made out of? I'm 90% sure they're celluloid. So celluloid was invented in 1866, and it was the first form of plastic. Sorry, I'm not trying to say that. Like, the reason I'm saying that, I'm like trying to be sarcastic and I don't know how to use a sarcastic voice. I hate like when I'm watching a video and people are throwing so many facts with like exact dates at me. I'm like, hold on, let me write this down. I can't keep this all in my head. But yeah, so I do believe this is celluloid. So these beads, I was kind of like, these beads are set on metal wire, and I'm like, are these beads, like, did she add these later on? So a bead actually broke off. So I decided to do some investigation. So I like cracked it open with like the backside of a spoon, and it was like chalk. Like it was like literally chalk that had like a painted glaze on it. Anybody know anything about that? Because I don't. Anyway, look at all the detail in this hand. Look at the bottom. Look how old she is. It's actually navy. Like the bottom of the hat right here is actually a navy velvet. So as you guys can see, you're like, what the hell? Nobody's head could fit in that. So this would be worn over. It fits very perfectly like this. So I don't know how to date it. I'm thinking late Victorian. Because Edwardian, you think you get into the Edwardian era and it's like really big hats with like entire like dead birds on them. Like an entire dead tropical bird thrown onto the hat, obviously taxidermied. So I don't believe this is Edwardian. I do believe this is kind of maybe like mid to late Victorian. It could, but look at this. Anyway, this is a really special piece to me. Not sure about the price. And these, this ribbon on it is also authentic. Original, I should say original. And this is my favorite one, my favorite hat. It's really ugly, right? Like looking at it now, it's like that's a Frisbee. That's not a hat. It is a hat. So unfortunately, due to its old age, it's very flattened out. I mean, it would have been worn flat anyway, but at the time, like all of this mesh and all of this beautiful like paper mesh would have been, it would have been less of an eyesore. Let's just say that. So this hat has seen better days, but if you look at the inside, you can see the, here we go, the velvet. This is the most exciting thing. So I was like, okay, I do believe this one has celluloid sequins as well. I can confirm that because celluloid is extremely flammable, which is why they stopped making it. It's super dangerous. As you can imagine, if you're wearing like a bunch of flammable sequins and flammable like accessories, like in Victorian era where things were like lit up with fire, I mean, come on. So anyway, the reason I know that it's celluloid is because here we have some heat damage. So I'm not sure if this got like too close to a hot stove or if it, I don't know. But as you guys can see, these are like suffering from some heat damage. So yeah, celluloid sequins, super cool, probably pretty rare. If you could feel the inside of this hat, there is just so much wire, like just very thick, heavy wire. So how would this be worn? Let's see. Probably like this. Because in the 1890s, you wanted an S silhouette. What is an S silhouette? So I don't even really know how to, like, I know what an S silhouette is, but it doesn't look like an S to me. So you have like your front like brim going out, and then you have like maybe a curve at your waist, boobies, but then a curve at your waist, and then you have a bustle. So I'm trying to think, like, did I make an S? Because anyway, it's called the S silhouette, and this, I believe, would have fallen in line with the S silhouette, which was like late 1880s, early 1890s. So that's my little history lesson. This is my favorite hat for obvious reasons. It's a mourning hat, has a long brim. I love it. You could also, it was a thing to like wear your hats like at an angle, like not even at an angle, like it pretty much just pasted to the side of your head at one point. But this one, because of the wide brim, I do believe it would have just worn flat on a head. I have loads of like Victorian Edwardian gloves. Obviously gloves, like they don't really need their own video. They could. Oh, you guys are gonna love this. This is an accessory like bib. So it has, well, here is a good example of small clasps, but they're just not the same. You can see there's like really small delicate wiring on the inside to keep the shape of this, and you would wear it and it would fit very tightly around your neck. And you'd put, of course, whatever else the hell you wanted underneath it. So accessories were a big thing. I'm not sure exactly what this is called. I've been calling it a neck bib, and I know that's probably not historically accurate. I did get my hands on a couple of Victorian scarves. Not in the best of shape. They've seen better days, but somebody will love them. This is just so light, and it has they smell like the 1800s, and I don't really know how to explain that without making it sound bad, but it's a good thing. They don't stank. They just have a smell. This is another Victorian scarf. Very delicate. This one's in great condition though. And this is, this would go with mourning. Ah! More gloves! More gloves. Very light. Look how small their hands were. That's ridiculous. Mine are, I have huge, ginormous people hands. This is just like, someone tell me, what is this? I feel like I should know. When I first saw this, I was like, oh, I know what this is. This would go on the back of your bustle. But I think they were kind of starting to tone down on the bustle drapery. So it's too long to be like a, I mean, obviously it's not a handkerchief. Look at the style. Maybe it is just a little bustle drape, a little bustle cape. I have a few of these, so I know I'm not going to get too much into men's fashion, but at the time, the suits would have separate collars because they didn't have like industrial sized washing machines, so they wouldn't wash their suits like all the time. We don't wash our suits all the time, so what am I saying? The collars were separate from the suit because if they got discolored, you could remove them and wear a new collar under your suit that you haven't washed in like 10 years. And it would still look crispy clean. This one actually is pretty interesting. It says patent something something March 16th, 1915. So we're actually also out of the Edwardian era by this time. Now I'm going to show you, there's a couple more accessories in here, but I'm going to save you guys the time. I have this mourning bag, velvet, just so much velvet with glass beads. This has the original chain, which is lovely. Velvet lines. And when I open this bad boy up, his little mirror, here is the inside. Actually, it's surprisingly clean on the inside. You guys can just look at the hardware on these purses. It's just beautiful. Can you guys see this? Look at that beading. Okay. This glass beaded purse. So just know that glass beaded coin bags like this are heavy. This has a replaced chain. This is a modern day chain. Everything else is original. It is missing a couple of the glass bead tassels. This bad boy, look at this beautiful artwork. These actually are pretty common. People held on to these, and like, I don't know if it's like a family heirloom thing, but you can find these. I believe they were Austrian, like imported from Austria to the US. So I do think they are common from my research. But look at the inside of the bag. Still, just because they're common, I wouldn't consider them like, it's still valuable. This one is probably my overall best piece out of the entire lot. This is I have a cuff link. I have a straggler who wanted to be in the video. Little cuff link. This reminds me of Art Deco. When I first saw this, I was like, is this 1920s? But no, it's not, because I had to look at the inside and get a good reference. This is definitely Victorian. It has the Victorian like trim on the inside. This thing is so beaten up and tattered. I'm almost like afraid to stick my hand too deep into it because I don't want to like rip anything. But if you guys can see the trim, it is rode hard, put away wet on the inside, but the outside is absolutely immaculate. There are a couple of areas of missing beads. Again, these are, I believe, glass beads. Original hardware, which is amazing. Obviously the hardware is a lot thicker, a lot better made than what you'd find today. This piece is stunning. When I first saw this, I thought the tassels were added later on, but the tassels are actually also original. So yeah. I'm trying to educate those of you who don't know that much about Victorian fashion without telling you guys too much, just because I don't want to stretch my knowledge beyond what it actually is. So yeah, hopefully that helps you guys who aren't new to my channel. Hopefully that helps you guys identify things if you are at an estate sale or like an antique store that has antique clothing. Hopefully that helps some of you, and it's just fun to kind of like educate yourself on stuff like that. So like I said before, I'm a full-time reseller, so most of my videos are not this special, but if you are interested in other reseller content, hit that subscribe button. It helps the algorithm also. If you like the video, and just making it this far honestly helped the algorithm, so thank you. I'm going to leave a link down below in the description to my website. 90% of these pieces will be listed to my website first before anywhere else. I will leave them exclusively on my website probably for about a month before I end up integrating them onto another platform if I need to do that. My website is honeyragsco.com. I also have an Instagram that I'm a lot more responsive on if you want like an immediate response. Go drop something down below in the comments on my Instagram. It's a lot more user-friendly for me to respond to people quickly. So thank you so much for watching. Happy selling, happy antiquing, and stay safe.